The ongoing conflict in West Asia is now triggering a global supply shock, and this time it's sulfur, a critical industrial commodity that underpins everything from fertilizers to metals and modern electronics. As tensions escalate around key shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz, nearly half of the world's seaborne sulfur trade is at risk. The Gulf region, which accounts for over 45% of global sulfur exports, has become a choke point. Sulfur, a byproduct of oil and gas refining, is essential for producing sulfuric acid. Its disruption is already hitting global supply chains hard, with over 44,000 companies reporting shipment disruptions. Prices are rising sharply in China, which is the world's largest consumer. Sulfur prices have jumped 15% since the conflict began. Meanwhile, global urea prices have also surged around $700 per tonne, which is a 45% hike. The ripple effects are especially severe for countries like India, China, both of which are heavily dependent on imports for fertilizer production. Joining me on the show to understand what this crisis means for India is Ambassador Jayan Das Gupta, former ambassador to WTO. Also with us is Anantu, co-convener of Safe Food Alliance, and Asha, as well as Manish Chand, CEO, Center for Global India Insights. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking time out. Ambassador, how concerning is the shortage of some of these important products for India, including sulfur at this point, which is likely to have some sort of disruption on price points of urea or fertilizers for India?
Take up the matter relating to sulfur. Sulfur is after NPK, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, it is the fourth most important ingredient for soil health. It helps in protein synthesis, oil biosynthesis. Oil seeds, for instance, if they are deficient in sulfur, they will not be able to produce as much oil. And it lowers the pH in soils. So it is the sulfur is required for not only making other fertilizers. For instance, it is used for breaking rocks and extracting phosphates for making other fertilizers. So it is for fertilizers, it is extremely important. It is important for electronics, for chip making, for batteries. It is important for auto components. So a range of industries, and 60% of our sulfur comes from West Asia. Of course, there are other supply sources, but they would be expensive and they would all follow a global price level. So this is going to affect our crop production because it is an essential fertilizer in a sense, and sulfuric acid is the basis for many of the chemical reactions, in industry. So that is one. As far as urea is concerned, the basic raw material is crude oil. Of course, we have now enhanced our capacity for urea production in India, but it is still inadequate. And that is why we have to also import urea. And urea would be, the prices, as you have mentioned, have gone up significantly. Sulfur prices have also gone up. So this is, all told, this will have a very adverse impact on crop production, on sulfur, on, electronic items, on a range of industries, including chip making, auto components, and batteries, electric batteries. So it is not looking good if this war continues for long.
Absolutely.
If it is going to end in 2 to 3 weeks, as President Trump in one of his speeches has mentioned, that would, I think, put a curb on the rising prices.
All right.
But it will take a few more months to stabilize.
Okay, a few more months to stabilize. Anantu, what sort of impact are we looking at as far as global fertilizer production is concerned, and the related impact on food security on India? Should Indians be worried? Should average consumers be worried?
In the agriculture front, we have to really be very wary of it. It's going to be a huge thing. Basically, even when you are talking, for example, when he was talking about local production of urea, you need an LNG as a gas, as an input from outside. So predominantly it's import dependent. And we should have, the early warnings came from the time the Ukraine war started. So that was also one of the main routes for us for coming in. And now the major portion of your sulfur, or for that matter, urea, also comes from the GCC countries. So it's a major problem. One, in the position of availability. The second crisis in that is the price. Even if it is available, for whatever is available, the price escalation is also very, very high, and it's also to be watched right now. In the 23 or 24, it was basically what we spent on this urea and LNG was double of what you actually budgeted. So for this year also, what you have just planned is 1.71 lakh crores. Couple of years back, it was 1.17 lakh crores, and we touched 2 lakh crores. That's the amount it's going to hit you on the imports, basically. And 70 to 75% of it, we are dependent only on the imports. So it is a huge crisis in the waiting. It is a huge problem. We will also talk about, is there an alternate possibility?
Okay, we will talk about the alternate possibility, but Manish, I think the crisis is now increasingly exposing how fragile some of these global supply chains are at the moment, and the need to diversify away from them. Can we do that? And if yes, how long a timeline will it take?
So yes, the global supply chains have been majorly disrupted and rattled by the Iran war ripple effects. The Strait of Hormuz blockade is just not about oil. It is about vital ingredients, industrial inputs like sulfur. And sulfur, mind you, is in a way the backbone of the fertilizer industry, and by extension, the food economy. It's a ticking time bomb. If the situation doesn't stabilize and the supplies don't resume, I would say, in the next 2 months or so, it will hurt us economically in a very significant way. Obviously, like with other things we are doing, for example, with oil and gas, we have to work out, India has to work out a diversification strategy. But, the Gulf accounted for more than 40%, 50% of India's urea imports and sulfur. So it is not going to be easy to find replacements. Domestically, India is scaling up the production, but you still need gas. You still need these ingredients. And that all goes back to the Gulf region. So, what this whole crisis has exposed is a, overwhelming dependence on the Gulf region for oil, gas, and vital inputs like fertilizer. We face a similar situation with the Russia-Ukraine war as well, where again a lot of our fertilizer, urea, came from Russia.
Right.
But at that point, because it was a war between Russia and Ukraine, and Russia being a time-tested friend of India, we could still find a way out. But as far as I can see, just as we have done with the oil, we have strategic petroleum reserves. I think we need to also work out on strategic urea reserves for the future. You have to anticipate contingency like this. And when we're talking about diversifying supplies, probably we can get Russia to supply more, and maybe there are other countries as well. But it's not going to be easy to replace. Okay. The Gulf also worked as the source of these vital input in economic sense. Gulf is closer to us. It's part of India's extended neighborhood, and it makes eminent economic sense to be importing from there. So any other option would be also expensive.
Okay. Manish, just a quick follow-up question on that. You said the government should prepare in advance. This is a black swan-like event. Nobody anticipated that the US and Israel are going to strike Iran on 28th of February, which is when the world was caught sleeping through it. Suddenly woke up to a new war breaking out. So in a situation like this, when one cannot anticipate, what do you believe should be the backup options that government should have? Do you think they should build enough container capacities, look for alternative channels? What should they do?
See, first of all, I don't believe that it is a black swan event, in the sense that, it was coming. The writing was on the wall for a very long time, at least for the last 3-4 months. I was in Israel when the war broke out, and the war clouds were looming. Israelis were quite prepared that it will happen. So to say that we could not anticipate is not quite correct.
Okay.
But having said that, nobody anticipated that it will happen so quickly on February 28th. because at that point diplomatic options were being explored, and that such an attack would happen so suddenly and dramatically, that were not expected. But having said, this is part of diplomacy. This is part of, government has to prepare where India's vital interests are at stake. What we are talking about, is a food security for India, agriculture economy. Agriculture is like accounts for a major chunk of our GDP. Our economic growth rate will be derailed. So when we're talking about preparation for contingencies, so going ahead, we have to create reserves. There is really no other way out. And as I said, other options are there, some
Right.
of them distant countries and all that, but that will not be economically very viable.
Okay.
So I think we have to, this is a wake up call in a way.
All right.
But let's hope that,
That's
the
fair.
war kind of ends soon, and or at least there's a tactical pause in hostilities, and it's, shipping and other things resumed, and we are able to get the much needed sulfur and
Okay.
urea fertilizers.
All right.
Yeah.
Everything pinches on hope. But apart from hope, when it comes to contingency for preparedness, and you mentioned that there is need, of course, to get to alternative sourcing routes. How soon can India do that? How soon can India buffer up and come up with alternatives?
Correct. The first and foremost thing, see, basically, like he was talking about keeping reserves. Reserves cannot be long. I mean, it cannot keep it for long periods. For example, we can only talk of some 60 lakh metric tons right now, but your requirement will be 360 lakh metric tons for a year. So it is not easy to just pile up and keep them economically also, and space-wise and every-wise. So what is the resilience option for this? What is the alternative for it? Is there a local? For a country that's talking and priding about Atmanirbharta, we have to really think of what is an alternate. Can I have? See, I will for some time now. I will just forget the industrial implications, which is huge and which is there is not an easy alternate route. But for agriculture, we have. We have been doing this without importing. You have been doing agriculture. In agriculture, you can replace this urea. Urea, for instance, I just have to clarify one thing. Urea is not a direct input for it. I mean, it fetches nitrogen, but you need the bacteria there. You need a solubilizer bacteria there. There's something else that has to enhance it. So if you just put in a bag of urea, your plant will never grow there. So you also need the soil. You need the carbon material there. So that is where we will have to now work on. And is there an alternate for this urea? Can the nitrogen be fixed locally? Can I have local? I mean, say for example, if you just have micro composting centers across all the urban centers, all your organic waste is not wasted in that sense, or the agricultural waste itself. You will have to talk of these resources being resourcefully used, and every agricultural produce which is considered as waste today should be recycled back. That regenerative agriculture has to come in. We can easily think of a lot of, say for example, if you just had water hyacinth, for example, you will have silica, you will have sulfur, you will have all this coming up from just using it along with your manure. Human manure can be used. A lot of these options are available in front of us. We should have started thinking. I'll just quote a small example here. In 2020 or so, Chhattisgarh government just started this as a problem, as Godan, I just don't remember, Godanya Yojana, basically,
Okay.
where they had a stray cattle problem. But what they did was the women groups could just collect the dung and sell it to the government for 2 rupees. Government bought it up, and then it was composted by the women SHGs and then sold it at a subsidized rate. And in 3 years, the state government reduced its by 30% of the dependency on the urea and synthetic fertilizer. I mean.
Okay.
So that is the possibility lying in front of us. We will have to think and move towards this alternate, which is more local, more ecologically eco-friendly also.
All right. Thank you for that interesting anecdote, taking away from what India can do as far as its capabilities to indigenously fill up some of these gaps. Ambassador, before I let you all go, is India prepared for the cascading effect that some of these absence and dearth of some of these important components could have on industrial and food sectors? Because we are looking at not just urea, we're looking at sulfur, we're looking at plastic, we're looking at the ramifications now with each passing day. If the war were to persist, and even if, let's say, the war were to end, some of these long-term, short-term impacts and pains are going to be felt over weeks to come.
Absolutely true. As far as sulfur is concerned, there are a few suppliers worldwide. Kazakhstan, for instance, Canada, the US, even Korea, they do sell sulfur in the global market. But of course, in order to get supplies from them, it will take time. And the prices will also be high because of the fact that 45% of the sulfur of the world comes from West Asia. So if that gets choked, the others will raise their prices as
Right.
well. So it is going to have an impact on our agriculture, that is for sure. And mind you, the time when we require the fertilizers for our kharif crop, it's not very far from now. Today is the 4th of April, and we will need the fertilizers in about 2 months' time.